Manchester United have drawn against Fulham. It's another game where Ruben Amorim doesn't get the 3 points. It's another game where I have to say over the 90 minutes, the football was abysmal. We're going to start with the first 10-15 minutes where Manchester United were fantastic. Matheus Cunha was energetic and brilliant to watch. And then we're going to move on to a couple of refereeing blunders where Manchester United get given a penalty. And on the other side, Manchester United's goal is allowed to stand, where I believe both of these decisions were definitely controversial. We're going to look at the brilliant performance of Leny Yoro, some thoughts on Manchester United's goalkeeper situation with Onana and Bayindir, and how the substitution of Anthony Robinson really got Fulham back into the game down that left-hand side with him and Alex Iwobi. But the first thing we're going to talk about is those first 10 or 15 minutes we saw from Matheus Cunha. He was able to get 3 shots off, and that is because his movement and in and around that box was absolutely brilliant. Between him, Mason Mount and Brian Mbeumo, some of the football was fantastic to watch, especially in the tight spaces. Mason Mount with an excellent touch laid it off to Matheus Cunha. He got the shot off, but he ended up hitting the post. And especially just in general, in those first 10-15 minutes, I thought Manchester United's press in general was fantastic. But the problem is that after that first 10-15 minutes, they don't have anyone to really bring control to the game. And that is because this double pivot here of Casemiro and Bruno Fernandes is absolutely abysmal when you want to control a game. I don't know how Bruno Fernandes has a 7.2 rating here, but both of them love to play these long passes. And there was such a gap between this front three that Manchester United have and then the double pivot that they have, that allowed Fulham space in midfield to be able to build up the play. The problem with Casemiro and Bruno from both of them is that both of them love long passes, both of them love hero passes. None of them really know how to control a game, and that was a huge problem for Manchester United throughout the game, because on the other side, I have to say Sander Berge and Lukic both allowed Fulham to have some sort of control just because the passes were accurate, just because players like Bassi and Anderson were able to bring that ball out with confidence. I have to say Manchester United's backline, Leny Yoro, Matthias De Ligt, Luke Shaw in general were fantastic. Aerially, they were winning the ball back. Inside the box, both of them were absolutely ridiculous. I remember that recovery challenge that Leny Yoro made against Josh King when he was through on goal. And then on the other side, Leny Yoro scored himself, or it counted as an own goal for Rodrigo Muniz, but it was his aerial ability that ended up getting Manchester United the goal. On top of that, Bayindir, I have to talk about him. He's got a 7.2 rating here because he did make a couple of saves. But he's such a weird goalkeeper because his ability to really get that ball out for Manchester United, his distribution is fantastic. Just look at that pass he made in the first half right across the Fulham defence. He gets him to Matheus Cunha, who took a brilliant first touch, but Leno was on top of that and made a brilliant save. And then you see him from corners, and my God, I don't think I have seen a goalkeeper worse at defending corners than Bayindir. It is absolutely shocking. He looks up in the air, he doesn't know what to do, and Fulham had 1 or 2, 3, 4 opportunities from their corners to really make something of it, but thanks to the defending of Matthias De Ligt and Leny Yoro, it didn't cause any issues. You go on to the game, there's a couple of refereeing decisions that we need to talk about. One is that Calvin Bassey one. Listen, I know Calvin Bassey, he's at the back, he takes out I think it was Mason Mount inside the box, and the referee gives a penalty. And I know the Premier League have said this thing of, we are going to break down on these inside the box set piece fouls that take place. But this was the wrong time and place to set the precedence, because just behind him, Luke Shaw has taken out a Fulham player, 1. And 2 is just such a soft penalty to give away. Bruno Fernandes, El Capitano for Manchester United, steps up to take the penalty, and he is a shocking penalty. And I don't know why he actually changed his technique for the penalties. I don't know if you guys noticed it, but he changed his technique for this penalty. He clears it over the bar. It's a shocking penalty, and definitely one that I feel like Brian Mbeumo is a good penalty taker. Matheus Cunha has taken penalties. I know Bruno Fernandes has been on penalties before, but there was definitely a thing to think about there. It was a shocking penalty from him. And I thought overall his game in general just wasn't great. I know defensively he did some good recoveries, he did some good duels, but I just don't like Bruno Fernandes in this double pivot. And it begs the question, what does Kobbie Mainoo have to do to make it into this Manchester United team? He's probably the one midfielder in this Manchester United squad who can actually bring control into the midfield. Someone who can actually slow the game down, understands tempo. I can't say the same for Bruno Fernandes and Casemiro. Let me know down below what you guys think. Should Kobbie Mainoo be starting for Manchester United? Then on the other side, Manchester United actually score from a corner that Brian Mbeumo puts the ball in. But when you see it, Lenny Yoro has two hands on Muniz's back. It should have been given a foul. It ends up being given a goal. And then Fulham make a couple of substitutions. Sessegnon comes off and Anthony Robinson comes on. And Smith Rowe comes on as well. And I thought that completely changed the game. That option of Anthony Robinson making that down the line run for Alex Iwobi to cut inside and then find those passes inside the box. I really want to see how many passes Alex is. Look, 84% accurate passes, but it's the passes that he plays into the box. It was absolutely brilliant. You see 5 passes into the final third, but there was a couple that he played to Raul Jimenez and Emil Smith Rowe for the goal, and also a couple that he played to Robinson. I just feel like he's so important for Fulham down that left-hand side, that chemistry between him and Robinson is so important, and that is exactly how Fulham were able to bring the game back. But what can Manchester United do in the future? Let's look at some of this. I have the Manchester United team here on the JLA tactics board, and I want to talk about what they can improve in terms of their in-possession play and their out-of-possession play. One thing that I've guided from these first 2 games is playing Diallo and Mbeumo together. It doesn't work. Amad Diallo comes out wide this way, but so does Brian Mbeumo. And I think out of the 2 players, you want Mbeumo to have the ball more than you want Diallo. And now it becomes a big problem because both of them need the ball a lot for them both to be effective. Diallo's not going to get you down the line and get crosses into the box. He also wants to cut inside, but it's just like Brian Mbeumo. And the problem with that is it's become so one-dimensional. And if you look at the second half, I think at one point, Brian Mbeumo only had 6 touches of the ball. I know he loves making runs in behind, but I think that stat in general just shows how less they were able to get Mbeumo into the game. Amad Diallo had quite a few touches, but I thought when he came off and Diallo came on, it definitely looked a lot better. Even though Diallo made a stupid touch, he had no scanning in his mind when he took that touch, which allowed Fulham to get the ball, which allowed Fulham to score. But I do feel with Diallo and Dorgu, it's more comfortable as wing backs than having Diallo right next to Brian Mbeumo and nothing occurring. And obviously I spoke about this double pivot here. None of them are able to set the tempo. I think Mason Mount would be a better option than Bruno Fernandes in this position. And I think Kobbie Mainoo is one player who I just feel like has to play. Whether it's next to Casemiro, whether it's next to Bruno Fernandes, it's just that level of tempo saying he can still progress this play to Cunha, to Mount, to Mbeumo. But the difference is that he can also slow the game down. Play it to Casemiro, play it to Dorgu. Slow it down. Why does Manchester United always have to play at 100 miles per hour? Why is it when the forward players get the ball, all they're thinking about is how quickly can we get this ball into the box? Why can't they think about just slowing the game down? Because what happens then is, if Manchester United can get the ball to Cunha and Mount in these positions here, Fulham have to all track back. And when they're all tracking back, what happens is you pin the Fulham players back into their own half. And now you can really talk about getting that control inside the game. But when Manchester United are playing this ball so quickly, they're turning over the ball to Fulham so quickly that Fulham can keep their positions up front because nothing's actually happening that's pinning them back. Also, there was a huge gap between this front 3 here of Manchester United and this double pivot between Bruno Fernandes and Casemiro. Obviously, this was Bruno Fernandes here. And this gap allowed Berger and Lukic to get the ball in the midfield so comfortably with no one pressing them after the first 10 or 15 minutes. It's just not good enough from Manchester United. The other thing that I want to talk about is when Matheus Cunha comes on Sesko comes on, Matheus Cunha goes out wide. I don't think Cunha was very effective in that second half when he went out wide. And that's something that Ruben Amorim needs to think about because Benjamin Sesko just did not get involved in the game as you would have liked. You want to get the ball to him, let him lay it down to Brian Mbeumo, let him lay it down to Cunha, but it just wasn't happening. Calvin Bassey, Anderson and Tete, I have to say, the 3 of them for Fulham were absolutely fantastic. And from the defensive point of view, Alex Iwobi would find himself here. Jimenez was the striker at that point, and Robinson was making this run down the line, and it was fantastic to watch. And what this does is, what happened for the goal especially is that you had this third man runner at that point, and let's say that is Emil Smith-Rowe. Bruno Fernandes should have been watching him, but he is not a natural double pivot player. He doesn't think about the defensive side of the game. So when Robinson makes this run here, Lenny Yoro is wondering about trying to cover that side, and Matthias de Ligt was so focused on Raul Jimenez, but he was ball watching the whole time. So when Iwobi plays this pass, Smith-Rowe makes this run in behind, and he's able to finish the chance by making that second man run. But that happens because this double pivot doesn't have that level of defensive awareness that you really want it to have. And that causes Manchester United problems defensively. So you can see they have problems defensively with their midfield pivot. You have problems offensively from the midfield pivot. How can Ruben Amorim solve this? And in my opinion, they need to go into the transfer market. I know they want Carlos Baleba, but if he's not available, buy another player. Get someone else in there. Because if you have Baleba and maybe Mainu in that midfield, you control the game much better than when you have Bruno Fernandes and Casemiro. And in my opinion, a lot of the problems from Ruben Amorim comes from this double pivot. Even though I believe there's more problems in terms of how Ruben Amorim sets this team up, in terms of how they create chances, because after that first 10-15 minute spell, how many chances did Manchester United actually create? I wouldn't say many. And how many chances were really getting the goalkeeper, testing the goalkeeper? Not a lot. And the fact Bryan Mbeumo only had 5 or 6 touches in that second half with the point about 70-80th minute into the game is just appalling, because he's one of your best players. You need to get the ball to him as often as possible. And Fulham, in my opinion, dominated that second half when it comes to in possession. They were much better than what I expected from Manchester United. Even when you look at the stats, Manchester United in that second half only had 4 shots with 1 shot on target. And look at where they're taking these shots from. Besides the goal, honestly speaking, what did Manchester United actually create? And that is damning when you think about it, because when it's 1-1, you think Manchester United are going to have that momentum to try and get the victory, but it was all Fulham on the other side. They had 5 shots, but a lot of the chances that they were creating, look at this ball possession, 55 against 45, it just wasn't good enough for Manchester United as a whole. And there is still a lot of questions to be said about Ruben Amorim. He has a huge problem. We've seen from the first 2 games already that a lot of it's one side to the other side, one side to the other side. There's not a lot of control. And I know Ruben Amorim probably wants control on the pitch, but what he's doing with this Manchester United team is the complete opposite. And I feel like if he continues to do this against the lesser teams as well, Manchester United will not be anywhere near the top 6. There's a lot of improvements to make. They've spent a lot of money on that front line with Bryan Mbeumo, Cunha and Sesko, but they need to be able to fix that midfield part for those front 3 to be effective. I thought Cunha was definitely probably the most effective, especially in those first 10-15 minutes. Mason Mount was also excellent, and Ruben Amorim might have to think about dropping Bruno Fernandes and putting Mason Mount on Kobbie Mainoo, someone with a little bit less hero ball and more about dominating the midfield in that position. There's a lot of questions Ruben Amorim needs to think about going forward. There's a lot for Marco Silva to be encouraged by, with the fact that Robinson came on for Fulham and they looked so much better because he is their main man. But Manchester United, will they get top 4? Will they get top 6? Will Ruben Amorim get sacked by December if he continues this trend of not being able to control games, of conceding good chances, of not creating enough chances? Manchester United are still not good enough at the moment. And I know it's only been a couple of games, so let's see how they grow into the future games. I hope you guys enjoyed this quick breakdown of the Manchester United game against Fulham. Don't forget to like the video, comment your thoughts on the Manchester United team down below and Ruben Amorim. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe for more, hit the notification bell so you know whenever I upload. Thanks for watching again, and peace.